And now, the moment you all have been waiting for. It's time for the Rad and Bad podcast by Hickory Learning Group. Here are your hosts, Mike Carrero and Sean Yocum.
Well, welcome back to the Rad and Bad podcast, the only place where we look the ABA industry dead in the eye and we call bullshit. All the time. That's just what we do. It's kind of our MO. We've kind of turned into a heel in this industry, for better or for worse. I'm here for it. I know Mike's here for it. I'm one of your hosts, Sean Yocum, BCBA, LBA, from good old North Carolina, United States of America. I think we've done a lot of talking on this show about how we got to engineer environments and how we have to look at what are the actual outcomes and like the clinical things that we're doing over just like checkbox protocols. And I think today we're going to tackle another massive blind spot in our field because we're doing an episode of Beyond the Clinic Walls. And I think there's this methodology that not a lot of people know about, but we found someone else through the LinkedIn channels that does something similar to what we do and how they approach families. I think as a field, we love to skip over building rapport and just basic human psychological soft skills. And we just jump straight into just like handing out this stressed out caregiver like an iPad and say, hey, you got this. Take this data from me. Thanks. And then we sit there and scratch our heads and wonder why caregivers are canceling sessions and just like burning out, faster than like my son blowing out birthday candles on his 10th birthday. Well, the truth, I think our industry's infrastructure and I would even say some tech platforms simply aren't set up to support the parent, but there is a different way. But before we dive in, I got to check in with my co-host, partner in crime, Mike Carrero. Michael, what's up? How are you? What's new?
Doing well. Since you brought it up earlier, I went back to our North Carolinian roots or future roots, whatever you want to call it. When I first moved down here, I did the stereotypical North Carolina thing and bought a truck, and then I sold it, and we are back.
I thought you were going to say you bought a tractor and you have a homestead and like you're like living off the land.
No, but we do have an upcoming tractor pull that I remember our staff were really excited about. And I said, does that sound exactly like how it sounds? And they went, yeah. I said, and you have fun there? And they went, yeah. And I said,
yeah.
Okay.
Sign me up for a tractor pull.
They said, it's just a field and they pull tractors. And I said, okay.
Do like manpower, like they're pulling it with like a rope and chain, or is like
it's very yeehaw-esque of like my tractor is better than your tractor and we go this way, like playing tug of war. And then someone's axle falls off and you're like, yeehaw. That's the best I can.
Okay, so I thought it was like,
I can imagine it.
Okay, I thought it was like a bunch of people that like got together and like they're trying to pull a tractor, like to see.
No, that's the World's Strongest Man, where they pull like airplanes and trains and all that stuff. That I would go see because that's like, the old circus act where they had like the massive dumbbell and stuff.
Yeah.
Like that's a feat of strength. Feats of horsepower are cool, but like I can only watch a tractor go back and forth like once.
I have no idea how I'm going to segue into introducing the next guest based off of this conversation, but exactly, here we go. This actually brings us to our next guest, which has a lot to do with pulling tractors. No, look, today we're going to talk about looking at an ABA career that a lot of people don't really know exists. There is a lot coming out recently with literature, and just imagine this as a BCBA, like, I hate to say it like this, but like no supervision of RBTs, no massive clinic overhead, just pure caregiver-led ABA. Well, the guest today is actually doing it. We found someone else that is actually doing somewhat what myself and Mike are doing, and she's actually proving it works. Melissa Kozak is the founder of Kozak Consulting, the brains behind the caregiver optimization model. Get this, Mike, check this out. More than 1,300 caregiver sessions, and she has maintained, ready for this, a 1% cancellation rate.
That's wild.
Like think about your own caseload numbers right now and just let that sink in. Like we're going to touch on that. She's also the founder of Going Independent. It's a media platform designed to champion other BCBAs to break free from the traditional mold, work for themselves, and just do the work they're actually passionate about. So Melissa, welcome to Rad and Bad. Glad we connected on LinkedIn. Thanks for coming on to bring some serious candor to the microphone. The floor is yours.
I'm so excited to be here. Thank you for that introduction. Yeah, I was trying to think of a segue too from the truck thing, and I couldn't think of one. So thank you
Hard,
for just pivoting.
hard. I was like, I have no idea
I
how
can
I'm
get
trying
you
to
one
get
based off of what we started with before the show.
Oh,
Let's say
God.
that again.
I said, I can get you one based off of how we started. You said that it doesn't have to be in the clinic walls. It doesn't have to be in between sessions, right? Let's do this at a tractor pull.
Yeah. And we referenced this a little bit earlier. It is still so mind blowing to me how we only think of utilizing our science literally in the walls of the clinic or
Gross.
in the walls of home. And we can apply this science anywhere. And yeah, I champion caregiver-led models. I, I love working with characters, oh my goodness, caregivers. And I think it's hard for people though. It's hard. We're trained typically to work with children, and not only children in general, but oftentimes it's early intervention. It's little kids, right? And so when we have to then pivot to work with the adult, to work with the parent, that's hard for a lot of people. It is a different skill set that you need to have. And so I think there's just a lot of clinicians out there that just get completely tripped up over it and dislike it, and we're not trained to do it, or at least not very well. And so then we don't do it, unfortunately. And so there's just a lot of gaps there. There's a ton of gaps in our abilities to really support the caregiver in our models.
Yeah, I mean, you referenced a lot of really it resonates with me because that's such a commonality that we see, like, not just in North Carolina, but field wide, right? Everything is like it's either early intervention and like autism specific ABA therapy, like just everywhere you look, and it's just AI generated like copy and paste, right? And then you look at skill sets of people, and those skill sets are set up the exact same way.
Yeah.
And we talked about it briefly beforehand about, there is so many different ways to do things. And you mentioned that like the industry is not really set up for caregiver led models. And so, with that in mind, what changes do you believe are necessary to kind of shift this paradigm of where we currently are to what other options are or what potentially better options might be? And why do you think there's some resistance with these potential changes?
Yeah, I think, and I'm very hopeful that our field is headed towards like true individualization, like individualized care. And I'm gonna back up a little bit, tell you a little personal piece of my history. I, a few years back, was diagnosed with cancer. And when people ask me about my treatment and what I went through, I think there's some assumptions when you hear the word cancer and what treatment looks like, right? Just like there are assumptions and, oh, you're getting ABA, this is probably what that looks like. Where it doesn't matter what you're working through physically, mentally, in our healthcare system. My treatment for cancer was very individualized for me. Nobody's treatment, even with the same cancer, looked like my treatment did, right? My doses were different. What did radiation look like? What did surgery look like? Like some people need certain things, some people don't. It's the same thing, really. I mean, if we kind of zoom out a little bit, everything should be individualized based on just who we are as people and our backgrounds. And so I think a lot of times we pit the different models even against each other, right? Like, oh, clinics are bad, clinics are awful, or I would never do an in-home model. That doesn't work. We need the child in this specific setting. And really, I'm here to advocate that the model should be individualized. And for some children, a caregiver-led model is the right model for them and for that family. And so I guess I'm here to advocate that there should be more options for individualized care in autism treatment. And a lot of people just don't know that this model is a thing, that it exists, and that there is so much more research now, right, around how effective it can be with families and with the children that we're working with. So, sorry, I don't know if that answers your question, but
No, it does. It does, yeah. I think so. I think it's a start to like a really good conversation in that, and it's interesting that you reference, and I appreciate you being here. I'm super thankful for you to like be here after that journey. I can't imagine how difficult that must have been. And thank you for sharing that. It was kind of something that Sean and I had pivotally talked about earlier, in terms of not you, but like how information is disseminated, right? When we look at ABA, right, we talk about a standard of information, right? The information that is provided to people is quote unquote standardized, right? In the aspect of when you're looking at medical treatment, the options are options, right? We know what works for insert this specific diagnosis, right? But the individuality of that specific person and their response to treatment and their understanding of treatment has to be individualized. So you take the quote unquote standardized tools that you have and go, okay, I'm dealing with this person and these markers, and this is what we're seeing. This is how we're going to fine tune these interventions. And I think that's kind of a lost art for a lot of people. I think we think in very short segments of life where it's, I just have to get through this authorization, or I just have to get through, this small period of time. And I see you for check boxes, which means I'm going to do the next skill that comes after that, instead of really thinking critically and clinically to sit here and go, these are all of the tools that I have. With what I can do, this is how I'm going to really approach it for this person. And I also think that that's not just an ABA and field thing. I think we see that in other disciplines as well. I'll use like education, for example. I'm sure we've all sat in IEP meetings where like the goals are borderline copy and paste across people, right? And I think this kind of highlights the fact that A, it's an easy way out. And we know that based off of principles of reinforcement, people typically take the easy way because it is more reinforcing, right? And B, people don't know that these options exist. And therefore, because they don't know that these options exist, there's a lot of resiliency to be a part of them. I think that first step of change is exposure. And then the second one is that education piece.
Yeah, yeah. And you make a great point. I'm very thankful to have worked for a company that had all of the different types of models of care. There was an option for a clinic. There was an option for in-home. There was an option for social skills groups to be out in the community, um, just for the caregiver-led model. And when I think back to the assessments that I did during that time with that company, I think, wow, how amazing is it for those families who come through at the very beginning from the initial assessment to be given all of these different options and all of these different models, right? But if there's a family who is paired with a company who maybe only does in-home, you can't give, right, during the assessment, a lot of times you're not necessarily going to be talking about all of the other potential options because your option is only in-home, because that's what that provider is able to do. And so I think sometimes we are doing a disservice even during the assessment period of not still telling families like, hey, this is what we offer, but there's also these other things out there. Our company doesn't necessarily provide that, but that's available to you. And I think that way too, even right now, as I'm doing assessments, because the only model that I do right now is the caregiver-led model. That said, I just had a client, a few weeks ago that came through who initially I thought, okay, maybe we could do the caregiver-led model, but actually I think an in-home model with the RBT would be the better choice for this specific family and for that child. And so I did make that recommendation, and I let them know, like, hey, I don't provide this, but this is actually my clinical recommendation. So let's set you up with a company that can provide that for you.
Yeah. And that's beautiful. I think it comes down to like true informed choice, right? And informed choice doesn't just mean what your organization offers. I think if we want to quote unquote like fix that problem, I think it needs to come from an outside source, right? When that referral gets made, I think that's where you can really address it from like a non-biased perspective. Because if you take the provider who's doing the actual assessment out of it, because again, you have a wonderful head on your shoulders with a great code of ethics that you're adhering to and going, nope, I'm not the right fit. This isn't what's going to be in the best interest of the individual and the family. I'm going to make a recommendation based off of what I know to do that. And I think we do a really good job of that as well, because we don't have a clinic space. It's not that we don't believe in that. It's that we just have different views on things with what we can personally like and organizationally support. And we make that recommendation to families very often. And Sean, feel free to speak on that one of if you're not fitting this model because this wouldn't be beneficial to you and you wouldn't get the most out of it, then I'm not going to give you that. Just because you can provide a service doesn't mean you provide the service. And I think the same thing extends to, in the current system, to the BCBAs, right? I think we talked about it last episode or an episode previously about the friction that you see between like clinical and operations. And there's always someone that's going to argue back and forth, right? Unfortunately, the organization usually wins because they'll give more services for those things. Because the BCBA can sit here and be like, this is not a good fit. I don't think it's the right option. I don't think it's what we need. And then 5 minutes later, the kid's onboarded because we can. I think that's a bigger problem. I also think you touched on a wonderful aspect of everyone just knows early intervention, right? And I said this earlier today, right? In case people didn't know, individuals that are children with autism become teenagers with autism and become adults with autism, which means if you're not seeing the big picture and the support system around them, you are failing them from the get-go.
I have so much to add to this.
Yes.
You guys are so nice. You guys went the nice route. Like I'm sitting here going, oh, okay. First in my head, like, don't even get me started on Mike. You brought up a good point with the whole operations versus clinical side. I think there was a lot said here where, we just have to provide more education to people and offer different options and be able to do that. I would say that's part of it, the education side of it, but it's one word, money. Like, let's just be very blunt about it. Like, the entire infrastructure of ABA is built around insurance reimbursement, and the model is set up as a fee per service model. And until that model changes, that is always going to be the incentivization for high volume, 30 to 40 hour week RBT to client pipeline. Like, that's how that's going to operate. Like, not to get too personal, Melissa, but like with with the treatments of what people get, like if you get surgery, like in your instance, cancer treatment, they didn't go and say, okay, we're going to recommend 180 hours of chemo. It wasn't like that. It's, hey, this is what you have to go through. This is what it's going to be. This is how we're going to get you cured. This is how we're going to do that. We don't do that in this industry. It's all time and duration based, and they're looking at what did you do in that amount of time versus what was the actual quality of the work. So the system basically right now, it's treating BCBAs like this middle management, like auditing from a distance, right? Rather than like, here's a bunch of clinicians that are actually embedding themselves in like the actual family unit. So I think the first thing that's got to change is the insurance billing codes have to involve and the actual infrastructure of how we're paying for the services. Because like right now, that authorization process is, it's for robust standalone caregiver-led services. It's an uphill battle, like trying to like sit here in some states and say, hey, I only want to do 5 hours of 97156 and maybe an hour of 57. And they go, we can't do that. And you're like, What do you mean you can't do that?
Because it
It's a
doesn't make
code.
sense.
That's a code, right? So we need to move towards values-based reimbursement structures that actually pay for functional outcomes and independence, not just for the sheer number of physical hours a body is basically sitting in a room with a client. I also think the other thing we can touch on, I think software developers need to actually talk to parents and look at tech platforms that are dominating the field right now, because they're built for RBT data collection and like administrative billing compliance, right? They're not really designed to be user-friendly, empathetic tools that, a stressed out mom or dad can easily, use to track meaningful real-world progress between sessions. I know, get me started. There's a few companies that have the parent at the forefront. Like I can think Hirasmus has a great parent activity side. What a Mole and his team with Frontera are doing. There's like a lot of stuff going on there. Team at Catalyte. There's like all these attend behavior. Like there's a lot of good tech companies that are doing good things, but a majority of them are not designed to be user friendly like that. And then I think the third one, and we're going to touch on it, is like you guys said, the education with soft skills. I think what's holding people back from doing more family and caregiver led stuff is it requires a heavy dose of actively teaching clinicians how to build rapport, how to understand family dynamics. Like, I think, what do we look at? One of the statistics, Mike's on one of the episodes where we looked at, I think it was like, what's the average age of like BCBAs right now coming into the field? And like a majority of them, like I could probably say without taking any data on it, they're not parents. Majority of the people coming in here are not parents. So they don't understand what it's like to even be a parent. So then you add that element to it. I mean, we just got to practice basic human empathy. And I think if we can't connect with a caregiver, it's not going to matter what your treatment plan is or what you're doing. Like, you have to be able to do that. So,
Sean, can I add one more thing?
you can. I mean, I just started rambling, so I'm sorry.
No, I think a piece that you kind of reminded me of that I think is also really important to highlight when you talk about prescription and dosage, right? In the example that you used, right, they didn't just give a blanket amount of treatment and say, we're going to do this. But I'd be willing to bet in the vast majority of medical interventions, right, we're going to say, this is what we're anticipating doing, and these are the long-term outcomes, and these are what we're going to do if it goes well. And you as the like patient, right, like if I was getting some level of like service done, right, and I go, I'm doing great, right, they're going to shift treatment based off of how I'm responding. They're going to say, this is your way out, because you look for the way out in medicine, right?
Yeah.
Unless you're sitting here just, treating like I don't know the dude's name from Operation, right? Just putting Band-Aids all over the board.
With the red nose.
Right? Your job is to quite literally not have you come back, right? Because it means I did my job. It means you were an active participant that received that service and did well, and you no longer need it. Are there things that happen in life that maybe you need additional services and support for? Sure. But again, that just restarts that personalized, individualized intervention protocol where you go, okay, here we are, and here is the path forward. And you always see that light at the end of the tunnel or that trap door to get yourself out of here. It's not like you're stuck in an escape room for the next 7, 10, 15 years of life trying to figure it out.
Yeah. The only other thing I was going to say before Melissa adds her final 2 cents was, like, I don't think we touched a little bit on why we think there's resistance. If I was going to say, it's just pure business inertia and fear of change. Like, that's literally what it is. It's, you have a bunch of companies investing a bunch of money into this massive model. And then you look at, oh, well, we only want to do caregiver only. What they're seeing is, shit, that's dollar signs that are disappearing because we're not billing 150 hours of RBT time a month with a kid. It forces companies to then scale down physically, but also scale up qualitatively. And I think that scares the hell out of traditional business models. Plus, I think a lot of clinicians, it's response effort, dude. Like, it's more comfortable to hide behind a tablet, a clipboard, a computer screen and say, well, the data says X, Y, and Z. And I think it takes real skin in the game and clinical confidence to step up into a family's living room, put the iPad down, and work with a parent through a meltdown in real time. It's fear.
Yeah. And
like,
sit there with them. Like, it's so hard to do that.
And it's interesting too, because when you hear stories and you talk to people from all over the country who are, doing different models of ABA, I that's not my experience. My experience has always been values-based care. And so for me, and I hear this and I'm like, wait, what? And I've been in the field for almost 20 years now. So I've been around for a bit. And but I'm coming from California where we have Catalyte, right? And I partner very closely with them, and I love what they're putting out, and they're champions for parent mediated interventions. And then also being in California, we have our regional centers here, which I think are also a bit unique and different from other states and what they provide. And the parents, so let me give you an example, even with the regional center. So when I first started out as a clinician, every 3 months, we were required to sit down with the representative from the regional center, which is the funder, the parent, and the supervisor BCBA. And so all of those stakeholders would be together, right? And we would go over all of the goals and the most pertinent parent concerns, and we would have a back and forth conversation about it, and we would be justifying in person to the funder and the parent in that moment services and the need to continue with services or not. And so I think from the very beginning, I think I was shaped a little bit differently coming into this. And so now when I see what's happening in North Carolina, which has been a massive red flag area in the field, unfortunately, it's just shocking to me because values-based care has kind of always been a thing. And then when we talk about what can we do about it, even, I had the opportunity to work with several payers on my own. And during the initial process, when I reached out about the service codes and contracts and all of that, I opted not to go and continue the contract with several payers because they don't allow you to build for just the parent training CPT code. And so I was like, well, I'm not doing it then. I'm I'm gonna go elsewhere, and I'm gonna take my business elsewhere and support families elsewhere because that is what I champion.
Yeah, I think we got to get into the weeds a little more here, Melissa. With your consulting, like I would love to hear horror stories if you want to go there. Like I would love to just
Yeah.
like hear like jaw dropping or just like a shocking moment where through your consulting where you saw maybe like an organization make like this like data-driven decision and just like totally ignored like human element. And it just blew up in everybody's face. Like, did you ever have a moment in your consulting where they were like, we got to follow the numbers? And you're like, we need to take care of the family. Why are you doing that? Either for the client or the caregivers. Like, take us behind the scenes if there was any. If there wasn't, we move on to the next thing.
For sure, for sure. Yeah, no, I mean, I can give you an example. I had a client recently who had just transitioned from another provider, and their recommendation was a very standard 40-hour in a clinic. And this little one was a year and a half old. And they changed insurance companies. So then came through to me, was reassessed, and my recommendation was 6 hours a month. 6 hours a month, not a week,
Wow.
of caregiver-led intervention. And that client ended up discharging from services because family was super happy, child was doing so well. They just needed just a few things to help them on their way. That child discharged in 3 months. So where's the disconnect there? That child, a year and a half, went from 40 hours a week down to 6 hours a month and then
Yeah, I don't.
discharged very quickly, right?
I
And
mean,
family was happy. It wasn't even me who said, you need to discharge or I'm ready. It was the parents that came to me and said, hey, we don't need you anymore. Thanks.
I mean,
Later.
again, I feel like I'm saying so many things that I've already said today, which is crazy. But like, not everything needs an intervention.
Mm.
Like, that is a child. Like, that is the earliest you could possibly get started. you don't need it.
You better have a BIP.
That's
You better have
a
a BIP for that kid.
ridiculous like over prescription, and I think it kind of like ties into your statement earlier from when you're talking about like those like quarterly reviews, like every 90 days you have to do that,
Yeah.
right? I mean, I tell this to students all the time. I tell this to RBTs. Like when you get a program that is being just quote unquote forced on you to like run, question it. Why are we doing this goal? Right? Because if they can't tell you how this is important for the next 3, 5, 7, 10 life years for the individual, why the hell is it in there? And the short answer is to appease a payer, right? And that's ridiculous. Again, you hit the nail on the head earlier of true individualized care that's truly focused on values-based care. And I think we also, I don't know how much you know about like Sean and I personally, right? In terms of like our histories, we both come from New England where it's just a very different environment of ABA, very similar to kind of California with how they approach ABA. And so we come from very individualized backgrounds where you are forced to really be individualized and like almost like I don't know if you've ever been on the TRICARE network where it is hyper fixated on like every little small detail. I think that
I'm
matters.
not. TRICARE is probably the one payer that I'm not.
They are
stories.
exceptionally scrutinous of everything from punctuation to like you want to talk about medical justification and why you're doing it, you have to do it. And they require you to do it every 90 days, which I think is cool because they want you to show that you're actually doing the job. But I think that's again talking about our first problem with, why there are issues, oversight, right? When there's just a lack of oversight and a lack of scrutiny, that family was potentially at risk for getting stuck in a perpetual wheel of services because they didn't meet someone that saw them and their needs. They just saw the standard template of, okay, kid fits the model, kid scored this on a 2-hour assessment, let's throw the book at them. And that's ridiculous. Like that's a pathetic cop out, and I like that needs to stop.
I mean, that's a pretty bad like horror story, but I wish I said like we haven't heard that before. Like we've had some families that have come over for services, or we'll get a referral where they went to another company. There was a wait list. They came to us and like, okay, we're going to do an assessment. We then give some like clinical recommendation where it's like, okay, yeah, it's going to be 10 hours, 10 hours of direct care. And we're going to do 5 hours a week of parent training. That's like our model. That's what we do. And they were like, 10 hours? No, we need 30. We need 30 to 35. That's what the other company said. And we're like, no, you don't. You don't.
Or that's what they came from.
Or that's what they came from. And then it's like, well, what do you mean? Like we heard that the other company said that we had to do that or they couldn't service us. And we're just like, that's a big misconception. That's a huge horror story. So I wish I could say I'm shocked by your story, but I mean, the kid was 1.5 years old.
Yeah, and parents came in and they were wanting the offer they had before. They were wanting the clinic. That's what they knew and were told and were looking for. And I had to do my best convincing to like, let's just start with this. And if we need to go there, we can, right? But we're going to start here. And they were agreeable to that, thankfully. And then we're just so thankful at the end of the day. And yeah, I agree with you. It's stories like that just.
Well, Sean, that highlights an even bigger issue, right? Like, what state was this in, if I may ask?
California.
Okay.
What?
The crazy part about it is it doesn't matter what state you're in. The snake oil salesman of come here for this amount of time, and it's so blanket statement for everybody. Like it's just a really good sales pitch. And then unfortunately, right, sometimes they come from service provider to service provider and you have to kind of walk them back like sometimes we have to. But like that parent was dead set on like, no, this is what I've been told. This is what the research says, or this is what I've heard from like a Facebook group or read online. Like I need this. And it's almost kind of like, not to downplay it, but like equivocate it to like buying a car, right? because the consumer is so aware of the product that they don't see the history of recalls. They don't see the like longevity of the vehicle and all of those big markers. They just go, I did the research. It says this is a good deal. We're going to take the deal, right? Instead of really diving into it and getting the better salesman that can give you something that's actually the truth, right? That's kind of like remember that meme of the like used car salesman where they slap the hood and say, it's good to go, right? Like that's the same kind of pitch that people give where it's like, yep, we've got you 30 to 40 hours. We got you covered. Don't worry about it. Little to no involvement. And we'll send them back ready to be with you. And we go, that's sketchy. That's sleazy. Let's not do that.
Dead air. Uh-oh, dead air. Fill it. We got to fill the dead air. I mean, Mike, I think you had a question for Melissa. It had to do with within the model, something about misconceptions. I forgot what it was.
So when it comes to, I mean, we kind of briefly talked about like where to go with this, but I think before we figure out where to go, we have to figure out why people might believe this. And so obviously we're all advocates, but you're really an advocate for caregiver-led approaches. What do you think some of the big misconceptions people might have about this model, especially from like your quote unquote traditionalist style ABA providers?
Right. So I think if we kind of get away from the money part, which I agree with you is a big part of it, right? I think a big misconception is that it's really, really hard. And I think we alluded to this earlier, right? Where we're trained to work with the child, not necessarily the adult. And our training doesn't cover working with caregivers. And so there's kind of a gap, I think, in the training just with BCBAs in general around how to work with caregivers. And I'm a huge champion for teaching soft skills, like just starting there. I think like if we beef up the supervision to our BCBAs and really hone in on soft skills, I think that's going to be massive, specifically for like, you don't need soft skills for the learner necessarily, right? You need it for the parent though. And so I think it really, really starts there. How do we train BCBAs to talk to families? And I know I've worked personally and I've mentored BCBAs who have just straight up told me like, I get nervous. I get all sweaty when I have to go talk to the family. I'm afraid what they're going to say. What if they don't agree with me? But they're busy also, if I'm in the home and they're cooking also and they're cleaning and they're doing their thing. And I'm with the child, how do I step into that? How do I build a relationship with them? I've got all these parent goals, but nothing's being done, and they're not even showing up to sessions half the time, or the child's in the clinic, and I just never see the parent other than drop off or pick up, even maybe a phone call check in. So, I think it's just gaps in how do we overcome situations like that? How do we get past the uncomfortableness of working with the parent versus the child?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, go ahead, John. Go ahead.
Well, I was going to say, I think one of the things that we hear all the time, or whenever we're talking about what we do with like, caregiver-led models, or even just parent training in general, one of the first things I hear from people that don't have the experience with it is like, oh my God, how could you do that to families? Like these parents are so overwhelmed with everything to put in the time to do this. That drives me absolutely crazy. Like that is the most condescending thing that you can say to a family. I think if you're just like, oh, you're just so overwhelmed, like that is straight up condescending. Or parents are just too stressed and we have to fix it for them. Like, yes, they're 100% correct. Like parents are stressed. I'm a parent. I'm stressed 24/7, right? All the time. It's just part of being a parent, regardless of neurotypical, neurodivergent. You're going to have some level of stress when you're a parent. You are responsible for, I'm responsible for my mini me, right? Until they're 18. And even I'm still responsible after he's 18 because I care and I love him, right? But they're stressed, and the reason that the stress level is higher is because no one's helping them with the daily struggles. No one's showing them what to do. They don't know in that moment, okay, how can I best support this person in this moment? Now, that's not saying they're not a great parent, but if there's these individual needs that need to be taught or supports that need to be introduced, like we have to be able to build that rapport, drop the clinical jargon, work on our actual soft skills, and give them practical, bite-sized strategies that actually make their lives easier in their day. And if you do that, if that's probably what leads, and we'll get into your cancellation rate, but they're not going to cancel, right?
Right. Well, I think you're hitting the nail on the head there with if I'm coming in with my agenda on what should be generalized and what I should show the family how to do X, Y, and Z, and what I think is important and the next step for that child, like you're gonna lose them. Right? I'm gonna go in and I'm gonna work on the things that the family actually wants to work on. I'm gonna go in and maybe it doesn't necessarily even align with what we have going on in our with the RBT's therapy session. Maybe it's completely different, but that's okay. You need to work on what the family is most concerned about and what are priorities to them. And it's funny, I did a webinar the other week and I had a question come through that said, like, how do I balance that where if a family really, really wants to work on something, but I, as a BCBA, don't agree with that. I don't think it's important. And my response was, well, if it's important to the family, work on it, right? So like to the degree you have, like there's always going to be a gray area there. And I know there's funder specific issues also sometimes with what you're allowed and not allowed to work on. But generally speaking, okay, so I'll give you an example of this. I had a family that I worked with where it was very, very important to them for their child to stand still to take a picture. And this child, it was nonverbal, and they had a lot of competing things happening. Regardless, all that to say that this was not necessarily what I thought would be a priority, right? But to this family, that child being able to stand still and take a picture was very important to them. So that's what we did. We worked on it with the family for quite some time. And eventually that child was able to stand and look at the camera for 3 seconds and have their picture taken. And so sometimes it's just doing things like that. Like, and then that family they see ABA in a whole new light, right? Because it provided a solution to a concern they had. And we were actually able to come in and help support their family in a very real way for them.
So I think that's the key is buy-in, right? It's understanding the importance of the family and what they need, not just the individual who's quote unquote receiving services, right? Like one of my favorite questions to ask a family, like when we like first start anything, is like, what do you want? And they go, well, I want for Johnny to blah, blah, blah. And I go, I hear you. That's great. What do you want out of this? And like we keep circling back to, I want them to do this and I want them to do this. I'm like, I love your passion and care for your child. I do. But what do you need?
Right.
What's going to give you the 5 seconds to brush your hair? What's going to give you that, I just want to go to the bathroom and not have to worry that someone's going to fall down the stairs? Like, what do you need as a person, as a parent from this? And when we get past that and we start working on that, I think that kind of ties into your like webinar question where it's like, I don't inherently agree with that. We don't have to agree with things in order for them to be right and just. And B, when it comes to those skills, that's where we have to like turn ourselves into little Swiss Army knives and go, okay, this is what you want. Maybe there's some prerequisite skills in there that we need in order to build this, right? So we work on this happy medium of your long-term goal is this, and I'm going to help you get there. And I'm going to think very critically with you to figure out the best possible outcome for this, not just, well, that doesn't hit the funding, so I can't work on that, right? we talk about this all the time where barriers are just opportunities to identify solutions. And if you're sitting here saying, I can't work on that because here's the reason, right? You're falling flat, right? Or if you're sitting here going, well, that's not going to benefit the kid, you're falling flat because the entity isn't just the person, it's the family. It's all of the caregivers that are involved in this, to include secondary and tertiary caregivers, because when they go to Mimi and Gramps and they're there 2 weekends a month, and those caregivers need the support and education and mentorship, you owe it to the entirety of the group, not just the person who's taking 9 to 5, right? And that was something, Sean, you brought up earlier, right? When we're supporting an individual, it doesn't matter for who and for how long. It's the consistency in what you're doing, right? Which means if the 3 of us are all helping Timmy and Sean has 8 hours, Melissa, you got 4 hours, and I got 45 minutes, it doesn't matter. Whoever's got the dosage doesn't matter. What we do with that time is the most important piece. And it stems from, how are we going to appropriately support this person with true values-based care that leads to long-lasting outcomes based off of what they want? Because I'm not going to sit here, and no one should sit here as a provider and be like, you need this because I have the degree. That's stupid. Like, that's plainly stupid. Sean, you got to look, so I'm gonna pass the mic to you. Go ahead.
I mean,
Go ahead.
it wasn't much of a look. It was more speaking on Melissa's point about the easiest way to get buy-in is to actually show that the science works.
Right.
Right. And we know everything about the science, that in order to see behavior change, you need a little bit of, MO, you need a little bit of motivation. So if you're just going in there and preaching a bunch of shit that, the family doesn't give a shit about, they're not going to buy in. So doing something as simple as, like Melissa said, like, what is one thing, like right now, that would change your life, like immediately, that we could work on? If you show a little bit of progress with that, well, guess what? That now opens up the door for you to then start teaching, like, the foundational principles of the science, because you could then say, hey, you know what? You know how we actually taught that is we used what's called the schedule of reinforcement, and we use shaping. And this is how this works. What's something else that is important to you? Oh, toilet training. Okay, yeah, gotcha. Guess what we're going to use? The same strategies we used to teach that skill, except now we're going to use it on this. And then that leads to generalization, and then you can start building the whole repertoire. But if you don't have that MO in the beginning, or the ability to develop a relationship, it kind of leads into the next question, Melissa, with kind of addressing the elephant in the room a little bit here. Like, I know on your LinkedIn, when we were trying to figure out questions and talking before the episode, you hinted at, like, I think it's on your LinkedIn. It's like rapport building can feel taboo in the field. There was something along those lines, right? What did it actually say? I forgot what it said.
Yeah. Okay. So just kind of jumping right into it, I think we as BCBAs get very hesitant to, I don't know, like, build too much rapport or dig into it with parents because of like our scope of practice.
Oh,
Well, I'm not a psychologist, so don't talk about your depression to me because I'm not a licensed mental health clinician, right?
Melissa, it's because that's the one thing that the BACB is actually going to rappel down from the rooftops, from the ceiling, kick the door down, and hold you at gunpoint and say, we're removing your credentials because you tried to build rapport. That's the one thing that they're going to act on.
They're excuses, Sean. They're just excuses.
It's just so funny that, we're afraid, I think, as a field to not ask too many questions. I think because, I don't know, maybe for some it can feel very like too much like traditional therapy, right? But that's initially what rapport building is I need to get to know you. I need to know who you are as a person. I need to know your story, your background, your family dynamics. I need you to talk to me like very detailed and in depth about what you've been through and are going through, because my recommendation can significantly change depending on the information that you tell me, right? I just had an assessment that I did with an a single father who, during the assessment process, it became very, very clear that he did not have the capacity to do a caregiver-led model. He was fighting a lot of personal battles, depression, definitely, or what he said he was depressed. I'm not diagnosing him. But there was a lot of those personal things involved. And if I hadn't asked those questions and just started there and just dug into like, where are you guys at right now with the family? What does it look like for you? I wouldn't have known that. And then my recommendation could have been different. And then likely that caregiver wouldn't have been very successful in the model because he wasn't in the right space to be able to participate in that model. And so yeah, we need to back up a little bit, I think. We have this, again, it's this agenda where I have these goals, I need to implement them. It's a checkbox. I need to make sure that I say this, and this, and I need to have data on this, and this goal. But at the end of the day, if I have a session with a family and they don't take any data, and I don't take any data on the goals that we've already drafted, but we've dug into a lot of their background information and their concerns, and that's still meaningful and it's still needed. And that is what builds the bridge into, okay, we're going to get there. Like, we're going to get into the nitty gritty at some point. At some point, I'm going to talk to you about differential reinforcement. Like, we're going to get there, but not now.
Man, Mike, before you talk, like, this is where my head is going with this. I just think this is funny. So, like, I really think this stems from like a lot of comments on TikTok about like when we talk to people who are like anti-ABA, they're like, it's outside your scope of practice, right? That's the first thing that they say. You can't be getting into mental health or things like that. But reality is, like, I think our field has this massive, like, deep-seated, talking on what like Lou Sandler said with like this like medical model envy. Like, we have this like inferiority complex. Like, we're so desperate to just like, we want to be seated at the big boys and girls science table. Like, we want to be seated there with like the neurosurgeons and like the physicists, and we're getting completely overcorrected with things. Like, we're convincing ourselves that if we can't plot like emotions on a graph, like, it's like not worthy of time. And then we sit there and we act like, if us as a BCBA, if we show any basic ounce of human empathy, right? Because we're so like, we got to do this, right? Like, BF Skinner is going to like dig out of his grave, right? He's going to rise up from the grave and he's going to come, he's going to snatch our letters from our name. And he's just going to banish us to the land of like essential oils and crystal healing. That's what he's going to do. Like, he's going to come in and he's going to just be like, this is not what I intend to do. Like, no, that's bullshit. Like, private events, building relationships, right? Like, we have to spend time with families. Like, that is so huge. Is we have to build that rapport, like you said, Melissa. If we don't have rapport, we don't have a relationship. If we don't have a relationship, the caregiver isn't going to trust the plan. And if they don't trust your plan, well, it does not matter how perfectly designed and mathematically elegant the behavior intervention is, because it's basically, they're going to crumble it up and they're going to throw it in the trash can. That's what's going to happen. Mike, anything to add?
Yeah.
Crystals,
So
baby.
here's where I'm going to put the, like, for people wanting to hear it in an ABA lens, because that's, what we've been told, we only think in one lens. I'm going to put it in that lens, right? That's a barriers assessment, right? What might get in the way with us being able to actually work together, right? I need to know what you're going through in order to better understand how to help you. Now, let's be clear. I'm not going to sit here and be like, they have insert this diagnosis and be like, I'm going to overstep and give you support for that diagnosis. I am not going to do that. But when I go, so what's going on in the house? And you go, I haven't slept in days. Oh, ding. All right, cool. I got something that we might be able to talk about and build some relationship here. I'm really struggling with X, Y, and Z. Okay, time is super important. And I'm able to pull out so much useful information because I see the family, not the individual. And I think that's that big piece, is everyone constantly just falls short of really seeing the big picture and asking the tough questions. It's like, I can't remember the specific quote, but it's like, what happens when someone actually answers you on the street, right? Hey, how you doing? Bad. Crap.
Now I got to listen
Now
to
what?
this guy.
Right? I have to sit here and be uncomfortable because I asked the question and you answered it, right? It's the same thing like you guys have kids, right? How was school? Fine. What'd you do? Nothing, right? Do you accept that as a response? Sometimes, right? There's some days where you're not going to push it because you recognize that that's not worth it. But other days you're like, all right, cool. Tell me about it. What'd you do? What happened? What went well? What didn't go well? How can we support you in the future to that so that day is easier? Oh, I got bullied. Oh, tell me about it. That's really hard, right? There's a difference between crossing your quote unquote scope of practice and, everyone always dies on the like code of ethics where it's like that could be a dual relationship because you said, "Hey, how you doing? I think that's a really tough time," right? No, that's empathy. Have a little bit of empathy and compassion for the people that you're helping and supporting because that goes so damn far.
Yeah.
Right? It's the equivalent of like an emotional hug, right? Like people just need some more emotional intelligence and to really understand that it's okay to struggle and it's okay to acknowledge that you're in a tough time and that is difficult and then go, all right, how can we address this together, right? Not treating symptomology, but how can we address this situation as a whole? Because you've uncovered that so many things can be improved with support and education and strategy implementation.
Melissa, what we're getting at is you just got to sell the essential oils and the crystals. Like that's basically what we're saying. But go ahead.
Have a little cart on the corner.
That's it.
A little sign. It's like lemonade.
Add more to this, Melissa. Anything else you want to add to this?
Well, yeah, I was just gonna say this might sound a little weird, but you brought up the dual relationship piece. I actually think that I have done a great job with connecting with a family if they try to initiate in any way overstepping that boundary of professional relationship. And then at that point, I'm like, yes, they trust me. I've got them. Then I put up my boundary, right? Like, okay, this is the boundary here, and I'm not going to pass that. But if I can get toe up right up to that line of I know you, you know me. I'm going to share some personal things about myself even. I'm going to tell you about my day also. We're going to make a connection about, how was the weekend, right? Every single session that I do always leads with rapport building. And it's funny because we do this with the child. We never hop in with the learner and like, all right, table time. Like what? And so how is it, why does everything go out the door with parents? And it does. We just have to take all of those wonderful skills that we have as BCBAs and apply them with caregivers as well. And so every single session that I do, that's where I start. I start with, again, the rapport building again and feeling them out. Where's your baseline right now? Because again, it very much changes your session. What are my recommendations going to be? Are those going to be, am I going to push the toileting conversation right now? Or wait a minute, you're not sleeping? Right?
Can't learn a new skill.
Maybe your priorities have changed even, and let's talk through that before I jump in with my, to-do list.
Yeah. And so we talk a lot so far about how to change, right? And a potentially new model that others may not have heard, right? So with your initiative of like going independent, how do you envision the future of ABA practice evolving, especially when we talk about caregiver-focused strategies that you're specifically promoting? And give me the preview controversies that you're going to see of like, well, these are going to be, I'm going to call them excuses because I think that's really just what it's going to end up being. But like, what kind of like taboos and controversial experiences do you anticipate arising from more individuals wanting to do caregiver-focused and caregiver-led intervention?
Yeah. I think I had referenced this earlier on with you guys, but I get a lot of questions about, so what exactly do you do? Who do you work for again? And when I tell people that I am an independent BCBA, they're always very surprised. Like, well, what does that mean to be independent? And yeah, I just work for myself. I contract directly with who I want to contract with, whether that's with, you know, different insurance companies, private pay. I partner with who I want to partner with. I personally like to get in there and do the work. So I don't hire RBTs. I do all of the direct work myself. And when I tell people about working specifically with caregivers, there's a lot of interest there. I think there's a lot of BCBAs who hear that and think, okay, that sounds pretty cool. Like, that sounds great. How do I do that? Maybe I want to do that too. And so, after all of these questions that I kept getting over and over and over again about, well, what do you do and how do you do that? And how'd you get started with that? I started this community called Going Independent, where I just show people that it's an option. It's an option in your career to be an independent BCBA, and then you get to choose what model you love. You get to choose what model you're good at, right? I am good at working with parents. I know that. It is a strong suit of mine. I'm probably better working with adults than I am with children. And so this wheelhouse makes sense for me. But you can be independent and you can still work in EI. You can be an independent BCBA and, do, adults with autism. You can be independent and not even work in anywhere in the ASD field technically. And so I've just been, championing word
Mhm.
hard other BCBAs to, take that step and go off on their own. And yes, there's definitely struggles with that. I think one of the things you guys alluded to before was the technology piece and how the technology out there right now is built not only for the traditional models. They're definitely not built for independent BCBAs, right? Because I'm going to pay the same amount of money to use technology that this massive multi-state company is using to pay that technology, and that sucks. um, but then also the technology doesn't necessarily support the caregiver side of things. There's no caregiver-facing app necessarily. There's no way for caregivers to collect data on the platforms or for me to share information on the platform. And so there's a lot of things in our field that just aren't set up for, one, being independent, and then two, the caregiver-led model in and of itself. So I'm definitely fighting two battles for sure. But I think it's so important to expand our field in this way. And if you are, a BCBA who's been in the field for a bit, or you're a clinical director and you are burnt out and you are just grinding over and over and over again in the same model, there's a different path. Like, there's a different way. And so I'm trying to be that model for other people to show them, like, hey, there are other BCBAs who are also going independent, and then there are BCBAs who are going independent and building, careers that are, doing the things that they actually enjoy doing.
Yeah, I mean, it's a wonderful thing. Albeit all new journeys are kind of scary, right? Especially from a medical model perspective. I mean, in ABA specifically, obviously it varies state to state, but like due to, and I'll speak kind of on behalf of the field in like North Carolina, right? Due to a lack of oversight and a lack of like information being provided, it's like, hey, I could say I'll go to get credentialed, right? And they're like, "Cool, go do it." And I'm like, "Okay, how?" And they're like, "Just send in a piece of paper." Right? And like we've seen that problem get worse and worse and worse. And now we're in that like, the bubble popped where they're like, wait a second, we need all of these things. And I think it's a little bit scary to try and do that by yourself. It's a little bit, nerve wracking in the aspect of I really do have to get all of my ducks in a row. But I think this is where, as a community, people do need to understand that they can rely on each other and you can do these things if you find the right people, right? And you're
Yeah.
the right people.
And I think that's key too, right? I mentor a lot of BCBAs, and I have an actual community where you can build alongside other BCBAs who are also going independent. And I would say I'm the perfect person to come to if you want to go independent, but I'm not the perfect person to go to if you want to build a clinic, right? Like that's not my wheelhouse. That's not my expertise. But either way, I think it's finding and connecting with people who have done it, who are experts in it, and you know, it's possible. All that to say is it's possible. I didn't think doing a model like this was possible several years ago. And here I am doing it and championing that for other BCBAs. So yeah, it's interesting. It's scary though. There is a lot of fear there. And there's a lot of nuance to building a business, not just the business formation side of things, but you want to make sure that organizationally and ethically and right, like you're doing all of the right things. And especially for, those who are truly going to work alone and are solopreneurs, it's important to make sure, like you said, you've got your ducks in a row. So yeah, connect with those people who have done it before and know what they're doing, because it can get tricky for sure.
And I think too, like one of the other like small pieces, and I hate it about our field because I feel like it happens more, but I don't know, the level of gatekeeping on things is just ridiculous. Where it's like, oh, well, I figured it out, and like every other BCBA in those like weird leadership pivotal positions, like, well, I didn't get trained. It's okay, you'll be okay. Why is that an answer? Why is that ever an answer? Right? If someone comes to us and they're like, how do you guys do what you do? We're like, do you want to sit down, grab a cup of coffee, and we'll talk about it? Like that offer has always extended to anybody who actually wants to sit down and learn. Like, let's help each other. There's no reason for us to try and like hide off what we're doing, right? There are so many people that need support. Put the people in the places that can provide the support and keep helping each other.
Yeah.
It's really not that deep. And guess what? When we get a little bit more intimate in what we're doing, because you get to fill your cup with what matters, you're going to do the job that much better. Because guess what? That's doing values-based care for yourself, because now you're not, running on the hamster wheel. You get to actually pick the hamster wheel this time.
It's so funny that you say that too, because I had a BCBA who, anybody that reaches out to me, I'm a sharer. I will connect with anyone. You reach out to me, I will answer you and we'll have a meeting. I'm open to that. And it's so funny that I had a conversation with a BCBA recently. She had reached out and was just trying to gather some information for herself. And we live very close to each other. And she says to me, I hate to do this to you, but I really want to do the same model as you, but I feel like we would be competition. And I had to like completely shut it down. Like, whoa, no. I will help you build this. Yeah, you're right around the corner from me. Fantastic. There's another family who could utilize someone like you to provide services for them. We are not competition. And I think that's like this hoarding of client, right? This, oh no, someone does the exact same thing as me. Uh-oh. Like, what? There are so many families out there that need our support. The competition thing is absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah, it's that pessimist versus optimist, right? There's two ways of looking at it. One is there's competition here and it feels like a threat. And the other one is we can better serve our local community because now there's more services available in the area.
Yeah, and touching on that, Melissa, like that's the exact reason why, like within my model with Hickory Learning Group, it's the exact reason why I didn't open a clinic, because there's 5 other clinics in the area that do clinic-based services. And I was like, we're just going to stick to this. This is what we're going to do. And that way there's another option, because no one was doing that around the area. It was just all these clinic models and no one was working with families. I do think we touched on a lot of like where we think the future is going to go. I mean, I see the future just looking leaner, meaner, way more decentralized. I do think there's going to be a massive amount. I think you're going to get a lot of business, Melissa. There's going to be this massive wave of BCBAs basically realizing with all the press that's coming out that they don't need the middleman. And if they can figure out how to just, go take a business class, go take a bookkeeping class, form your LLC. And I think, if they can use platforms like yours, like Going Independent, to launch their own boutique caregiver-led practice or clinic, whatever it is, I think we're going to be moving toward a model where the BCBAs are actually running the industry. Because let's face it, I mean, it's a bold statement. They need us.
Yep. Oh,
That, like,
100%.
eventually the masses are going to realize that. I thought about this the other day, and this totally off topic, but imagine if there was like a complete industry strike, like that all the BCBAs, we just said, you know what? We're not signing notes. We're not going and doing services. We're going to still go to the houses, but we're not going to bill for it. And did that for a month. What would happen?
Wow. They would try and gaslight you into like threatening a report, even though you're showing up and doing it. Nowhere in there does it say you have to bill for your services.
No, I don't.
It says you have to provide continuous services and support to transition.
I
I agree with you.
I'm still
I think it's a wild
support.
thing, and people need to understand that their certificate is the power, right? It's your, I mean, not even from like a power and like pious aspect of it, right? Like your credentialing is what's being used.
And
Like
your license.
it's you. It's always you.
Yeah.
I do the same thing with when I was at other places, Sean. I would do the same thing. I was like, listen, you have the credentialing. It's your power. It's your responsibility. You get to do what you want with that thing.
Yeah.
Do it.
I mean, there's definitely going to be, I think in the future, I think the shift is definitely going to stir up like this like hornet's nest of it's already happening. Like we're already seeing it. I think you're going to, I mean, I could have wrote this, like what's happening in North Carolina. Like the first thing you're seeing is you're seeing with all these moving pieces and changes in the future of ABA, you're seeing massive lobbying wars going on. Like that's what's happening. Like overfunding. We need to prove that this high hour model works because that's where it's at. Like instead of just like actually just sitting there and going, let's actually figure out values-based care. It's like, we're just going to double down on the research that says high model. That's the intensity. You have to do high hours instead of just like, okay, mathematically and data wise, there's not enough BCBAs. There's not enough RBTs that could actually provide the high level quality of services to the population that needs it. Like mathematically does not catch up. There's wait list everywhere. So if you can sit there and you can say, oh, we actually have this less intensive intervention, we can service more families. Oh, and by the way, it costs less money on the funders and it still provides people with a decent living and a decent paycheck. Like, how is that not a win-win for everybody? The reason it's not a win-win for everybody is because you have a middleman that you have to pay. And if that was just eliminated from the industry, there would not be this issue. That's like literally my hot take on this whole thing. And
I love that. Speaking of the middleman piece, right? And if you're looking at just pay as a BCBA, I get the money, right? Like you eliminate the middleman, right? That it's not going to anyone else. It's going directly to me then. So now I'm making more money doing a model like this. And then you talk about effectiveness, right? And even on the payer's end, I'm going to give you another fun statistic. My average graduation rate is after 6 months of therapy. 6 months, right? That's not that is not typical. And so theoretically speaking, a payer would see that and love it. Like, wow. And then we can serve more families too. I have so many low hours. I can have 20 kids on my caseload, no big deal, because of the number of hours that I'm serving for them are so low versus you have a bunch of kids at 20, 30, 40 hours a week, right? Like you like 6, 7 kiddos that maybe you could be helping. And then when I meet with BCBAs who are wanting to go independent, there's always a story. There's always something that brings them to me, right? Like usually, unfortunately, it's something horrible, unethical, awful that has happened to them in their current job and situation. And they're looking to be able to have more autonomy and to make decisions that middleman currently is making. right? And so when you go off on your own, you get to decide, okay, this recommendation isn't accurate. This is not 40 hours a week. This is 6 hours a month instead. And those are the types of things that you get to do by working working for yourself.
Man, I was going to say we're kind of towards the end. I mean, we have one more thing we wanted to touch on. I mean, you're basically, you're like us. You're out there doing heavy lifting. I'm correct me if I'm wrong. You're working with a lot of underserved communities where you're at.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's the important part too, is you don't have to stay when you work for yourself, when you are truly independent, right? Like we can work anywhere. And I just was, I came earlier today from working at a local nonprofit with women who are unhoused and doing group parent sessions. And, the model can look different than traditionally what that looks like for us. And so yeah, that is a big part of what I do. I think it's really important to give back to the community and to work with all different populations. And so yeah, sometimes I do private pay and I charge a lot of money for that. And sometimes I work with these local nonprofits and I don't make any money off of
Yeah.
that, right? It's a balance too. So but yeah, all that to say is, when you get to design the career you want as a BCBA, like when you're independent, that can be part of it.
I was going to say at the same time, speaking of that, you're also trying to convince burnt out BCBAs that they can actually, cut the cord and go out on their own. And I think, as you know, Mike knows, I know, um, trying to get this industry to just evolve. It's
Yeah.
like, I'm trying to think of a good analogy. It's like, I only know this because I go kayaking, like the little plastic, like, oar they give you, like, that's like what you're using to like steer. It's like trying to use that to turn around like a massive Carnival cruise ship. Like you're literally like, all right, come on, we got to go this way. Come on, eventually we're gonna get there. We're gonna get there if we keep rowing. So is there, final moments, Melissa? Is there like a story from the trenches, like a picture you can paint us, or like a specific moment where like you faced like wall of just like industry resistance and then you just said, hold my beer, I'm pushing through this any way I can because I have to take care of this family or this clinician or whatever it is, and what that advocacy looked like to change that trajectory?
Right. Um, I'm gonna go at a little bit of a different perspective from this for you guys, just to kind of paint a picture of what even brought me here in the first place, because I think this story in particular will resonate with so many other BCBAs who have seen the field and what it is and are very unhappy with it. Um, I we talked a little bit earlier about my cancer diagnosis, and when right before I was diagnosed, it was the middle of the day. I had a doctor appointment. I was sitting in the parking lot and my phone is just blowing up because I'm supposed to be at the clinic and there was a lot going on there. And I was supposed to be putting out all these fires, right? And I'm getting text messages and phone calls from parents and people are unhappy and people, it's like the walls of the clinic were burning down. And I'm sitting here supposed to be going to a doctor appointment. This is a routine doctor appointment. And my thought was in that moment, why am I even here at this doctor appointment? I should just go. They need me at the clinic. It's burning down basically. I need to go put out those fires. And thankfully, I didn't leave that doctor appointment because it was that doctor appointment that led to my diagnosis and everything that happened after that. But I tell that story to say that it shouldn't take a cancer diagnosis to recognize that changes need to be made, not only big picture in our field, but even with you personally in your career, you as a BCBA, right? It shouldn't take something like that to make you step back and say like, hey, this is a lot. This is too much. This isn't how things should be. This isn't how my job should go. I shouldn't have to be putting out fire after fire after fire. And that is what led me to go independent, to say, like, you know what, I'm going to get off this hamster wheel and I'm going to start something on my own. And I'm going to do the thing that I'm good at and that I want to do. And we'll just see how it goes, really. And I took the chance to do that. And again, I just like, I try to advocate for others. Like, it shouldn't take something that big for you to make a change. But I think it's important to move our field forward, because if we don't take the chance to kind of shake things up a little bit and do something different, we're going to stay stagnant. And then where does that lead us? It's going to lead us to like North Carolina, where things aren't going so well.
Yeah. The late great, not late great, he's still around, but Guy Bruce, guy I met on LinkedIn, said it best: adapt or die. Adapt or
We
die.
went in two different directions here, because I thought of The Office, where it's you miss 100% of the shots you don't take, Wayne Gretzky and then Michael Scott, right? Like, you just got to try. It's okay to fail. Like, you're going to learn along the way and do something. Before we wrap up here, Melissa, where can everybody find you, get a hold of you, learn more about everything that you're doing? Tell us more.
Yeah, I'm super active on LinkedIn. And then, just look up Going Independent. I have a Substack where I put out articles every week of BCBAs who do just that. They go independent, and a lot of them build models similar to myself, where it's very caregiver focused. And then sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's in the health and wellness field, or in sales, or working with animals, or, adult services. And so, you can find me over there, Going Independent Substack. Those are kind of the two big channels that I'm on right now.
Wonderful. Sean, you got anything else?
Just, it was a pleasure to get you on the podcast finally. I'm glad you're on. I feel like this was a fantastic episode. I feel like we touched on a lot. Just appreciate all the work you're doing. I'm glad we've connected with other people that are thinking the exact same thing that we're thinking. And I promise we're trying to put out the dumpster fire here in North Carolina.
Working on it slowly but surely.
We'll see.
All right.
Good luck.
Well, that is a wrap on today's episode of Rad and Bad. A massive thank you to Melissa Kozak for coming on and laying it all out there and talking about something new. So, if you're a clinician and listening to this, let today be a wake-up call for you. Stop hiding behind the grid of protocols and all these tech platforms that just treat people like data points on a grid. Lean into some soft skills, build some real rapport, and remember that you can build an independent career doing things on your own terms. The proof's right here, especially in that 1% cancellation rate. So, from the team here at Rad and Bad, stop checking boxes, start engineering real environments, and we'll catch you guys in the next one. Peace.
Peace.